So yeah, hi and welcome everybody to our session. And we want to talk with you about happier teams and clients with better PM and how we improved our PM process to make our lives easier at Kokomo. To give you an outlook on what to expect in this session, let's first take a step back and see where we have been like 3 years ago at Kokomo. And maybe as a background, Kokomo is a full service agency, so we're doing mostly websites and projects like that. And we have all kind of departments like creative division with UX design. We have an editorial department, IT. So all kind of people working together on one project. Back in the days, we had a lot of different project managers who all structured work in their own way. And sometimes that worked fine, but often it didn't. And we lacked consistency. That wasn't clear about which roles and responsibilities each person had. And it made work really hard and often also really chaotic because people were just struggling and running around and nobody really knew what to do. Everyone was unhappy, but yeah, let's them metaphorically join like it's 2020 and tell them what were their problems back in these days.
All right, so I was moving too fast. Thank you, Ella, so much for painting that dark image. You guys probably have seen what she did there. She painted it so dark that whatever we say right now, it will look shiny. So we are good to go. Let's see who's in here. We probably have account managers in this track. And if you're an account manager, you might be able to relate partly to this sad little guy in the corner who would walk around with questions in their head and get more and more concerned the more the project evolves. Like, will we finish on time? Will we stay within budget? And nobody would be there to answer those types of questions because nobody will know the answers. If you have a situation like that, or partly like that, then stay with us because probably we'll have some good impulses throughout the talk. And if you don't have a situation like that, still stay with us. Let's hope you have a couple of good laughs about our journey and that you can maybe have fun with a small little game that we embedded in our presentation. All right, this is a project management track, so probably we'll also have some project managers, and you might connect to the fact that sometimes you have people or folk asking you to do things that weren't part of the discussion before, that some other folks ask you to do these things for free, or that even other folks are not really happy about the fact that they have to do overtime in order to make these things possible. And probably we also have some developers in the session. And if you are a developer, I really hope that you don't speak fluently overtime on the one hand. And on the other hand, I really hope that you watch this session right now and don't watch it on a Friday night at 10 p.m. while waiting for a production deployment to happen. QA is also part of our stakeholders group, but QA probably isn't in this session yet because nobody invited them. As in the projects, they will probably pop in by the end of the session right before the Q&A and wouldn't know what questions to ask, and everyone would expect them to ask the right questions. And finally, we have the client. Super unhappy because they don't get the expected outcome. They slowly lose trust. And we keep trying to convince them that it's not so bad, involving in time-consuming discussions about how we can make compromises and so on. This was a bad situation. It happened years ago over and over in our projects, not all the time, but let's keep it very, very dark for now. We are here to talk about how we managed to go from there to the good place that we have today. And we are Ela.
Yeah, I'm Ela Meyer. I'm CTO at Kokomo. I started at Kokomo already 16 years ago, and I've been a backend developer for several years. And then I slowly moved more into the direction of being the person in the middle. So I was translating somehow between development and project management. And like 5 years ago, I took over responsibility for our development teams, and 2 years ago, then also about our project management.
All right, and I'm Chip. I'm actually called Ciprian David, but it's a super bad idea to be called Ciprian in Germany because nobody will be able to pronounce your name. Most of the people actually think that David is your name. It is my name, but it's not my first name. So if you want to talk to me later, please call me Chip. Everyone calls me like that. I've been with Kokomo for 5 years, out of which The last two of them, I've been running the PM team. And what we have been doing as a team in the last 2 years is basically what we are going to talk about in this session, together with the rest of the teams of the company, as you will soon see. So let's start with a project management framework, which was written personally, but by our CEO and our former head of operations back then. And you can imagine that they had to write it because they had to see all the things that we showed you on the previous slides, and they didn't have a choice, right? There was not enough trust in the company to not take it in their hands. They've written this framework, they have given it a beautiful name, the COCOMOR Project Management Framework, and then they reduced the name to 4 letters so that when it was first introduced, we spent probably the first 1-2 weeks talking about CPMF, or some of us about CFMP or CMPF. In any case, trying to get the letters right and leaving the content of the framework for the long-term planning. Jokes aside, we are going to talk today about 4 main things. The first one is, what kind of principles did we try to apply in order to solve our problems? The second one is, how did we try to solve our problems? So what kind of rules and tools did we use? The third one is about the who are the people behind the initiative and that made this initiative happen. And last but not least, I think actually the last point is the most important, is if you think of this project management framework meets COCOMOR as a too long year movie, what happens if how does it end? How does it look like? What is the outcome? So this is the 4th part. We will start with the first one, with the question, what is cool about CPMF? And it's not only this background image, which looks really, really cool, it's also our core values. But before we start with the core values, let's quickly tease the game. The game is a thing about artistry. You see, Ela, our CTO, is also very artistically endowed. She has actually designed 3 toys for my little girls and built them and gifted them to them, and my little girls still play with those toys because they look really nice. But Ela also does a lot of drawing, of painting, of potting, knitting. I basically, you name it. If it has to do with something, creating something artistic. Sorry, it is kind of like that. So we thought, what could we do in terms of imagery for this PowerPoint? And we didn't want to show you numbers and facts and things that kind of underline our story, but we wanted to tell you our story first and to use some metaphorical images to go with it. And somehow we came up on the idea to use images from fairy tales. So talking about status transparency, we couldn't think of a better example than the rose in the Beauty and the Beast, which gives you a super status about the progress of the spell that is cast upon the beast, and about how much time left is left until the spell becomes irreversible and he cannot transform back into a prince and live happily ever after with Belle. We have for each content slide one image like this, so you can make it a game for yourself if there's nothing else that you can take out of the presentation to just guess what story, what fairy tale it is about. All right, back to our core principles. The first one is status transparency. For me, this is very, very much about the first bullet point. The plan is the status. It's one of the truths that I think are most important in my job. And you have to think of it like this. If I'm a project manager and I tell you as a client that I will deliver a project in 3 months and then share a plan with you showing how I would do that, this plan becomes the truth for you, right? I may choose to lock myself in a black box and work on the project and during the whole time not communicate with you. And this will result in you as a client thinking all the time that I'm probably moving along the plan and we're still delivering 3 months. Usually projects don't work like this because they are unique, because they have a lot of constraints and factors that are hard to see in the beginning and that are adapting to the necessity of a fast evolving world. I'm going to mention VUCA just to mention it, but you know what I'm talking about. Projects are never as initially planned. So in the past, we made the mistake of not really talking to the client, and it evolved with small steps to a place where I would say we the project management at Cocomore maybe developed a passion for gambling and thinking in situations that if it looks 50-50 that we might succeed, let's go for it and not tell anyone. And if we succeed, we are the heroes. And if we don't succeed, we have to find out what we tell them how it went out. This is the worst thing you can do, of course, right? Because nobody will actually notice that you are the heroes if you don't talk about what you're doing. But most importantly is the fact that projects change, the plans change, the delivery dates, the scope, the budget changes, and we have to talk all the time as soon as possible about them with every stakeholder. We usually make it accessible for everyone in our core teams, but we also pay attention very much to inform everyone about the changes so that everyone gets what they are expecting, or the other way around, that everyone expects what they are going to get in the end. This was the first one, and the second core value is about the work packages, and Ela is going to take over.
Yeah, right. So the second core value is the work packages. And when we talk about work packages, we have to talk about two different aspects. And one is the size of a work package, and the other one is how we define them. And when we talk about the size of a work package, I guess everybody has heard about it, at latest since Scrum came around, that work packages shouldn't be so big, right? So ideally they are around 1 day, maybe 2 days, but they shouldn't be bigger. But also, we knew that it's better like that. We have never been really strict about this. And we often ended up with work packages that are like 5 days, maybe even 10 days, because it's more time consuming and more complex if you really want to break down tasks. So we often took the easy way. But then it also happened quite often that everybody, as Chip was saying, with this black box. So we had somebody working on a ticket of 10 days. It was always, yeah, looks more or less fine in the dailies. And then suddenly the 10 days were over and we realized that there were still like 50% of the work left. And then we really had a problem because we couldn't do anything about it. We just realized, okay, it's Friday, and on Monday, either another operating department wants to work with this result, what we are doing, or the client wants to get something published to live. So the only solution left was to do overtime, work at the weekend, put more people to the project, what ended in this chaos. And by now really taking care about having these small work packages, we make it much easier to keep the track of the status, as Chip has just said. And by this, we can react way earlier. So it's much earlier if we realize already after 1 or 2 days that there's something wrong, because then we can also help the people. It's not about, I mean, I know that it sounds always like it's a lot of control there. And of course it is somehow controlling, because if you want to have clear status, you need to keep track of the status. But it also helps people and gives us the opportunity to, I don't know, maybe put somebody else on the task to support this person, or to talk about again about the requirements. Maybe something was not really clear about it. Maybe there's a workaround and maybe we can speed up things. But even if we cannot speed up things, we can then at least talk early with the people who are waiting for us with some days in advance, because then you can reschedule things, you can create a new plan, and everybody can align on this. And by doing so, I think we take a lot of pressure from the people, because we don't so easily run in the situation of, yeah, all this pressure happening. The other thing is that we ensure now, and what also didn't happen in the past, that we define the work packages together. So even though we had agile projects, when we worked with the different different departments, that was still quite waterfall, because usually UX and design joined first. They did their part of the project, then the IT joined, then maybe the content editors joined, and it was rather one after the other. And there were not too many contact points between the people. And that often led to that maybe UX and design did something that was not what IT thought it would be when they first did the estimation. And then suddenly we had something that was way more expensive in implementation than we accepted in the beginning. And so we try to avoid this now, but bringing all people together at the beginning and ensure that all have the same vision of the work package and that everybody knows what it's about. And yeah, also to improve the cross-functional communication. The next core value is quality. And when we talk about quality, it's like I just said before, we try to provide space for people that everyone can deliver their best work, because I think there's nothing more frustrating. Like when you have good people, they want to do good work, and nobody's really happy when they have the feeling that, all of their workday is just like providing quick and dirty solutions, because there's always time pressure, time is too short, and they always have to run, and they can always just do something. The most important that it's running and that it will pass the test, and no matter how it looks behind. And that's frustrating for people, and it keeps away all the motivation you have. And I think that's the most important what you can take from your team. It's that they have the motivation, that they are willing to give their best results. And then it's really bad if you destroy this motivation by not giving them the chance to do good work. And by giving the stability in the team, and trying to plan in advance and to react in advance, we think we provide a space where now everyone is able to really do their best work they can. And of course, you cannot talk about quality without talking about QA. And like Chip has mentioned in the beginning, in the past, it happened quite often that QA was thrown in the projects really late. Maybe not at the end, but at least at the end of a sprint. And it often really happens that PM didn't book QA at all because they have to test it anyway, anyhow, right? So they can just test it on your own, because what do you need to do QA? And we all know that it's not like that. So there's more knowledge about QA, and you need experts on that. You know, people to define a test strategy. You need people who know about test plans and test cases, to define the amount of test automation. So it's important to include QA in this whole process, and it's also important to include them from the beginning, that they really have a deep understanding about what the project is about, and that they know how to build their test strategy around it to test the right things. And that is the reason why we gave them a special place in our workflow, so that we now really ensure that nobody forgets about QA anymore, and that they are always there. But now you might ask how we did manage to implement this. And then we talk about tools and rules. And this part is probably one of the most discussed parts of the frameworks, because we are not talking about principles here, but about specific tools and rules. And that's a great resource for junior PMs, because it helps them a lot to be on board when we always have the same structure. But it's always leading to discussions when you have more senior PMs, because they usually have their way of working. So they are coming from somewhere, they have experienced that their way of working works for them. And now they are joining us and they see, okay, now I should do everything different. And why is it like that? And that causes a lot of discussions. And it's important that you're open for these discussions, that you not just say, yeah, it's like this, do it like that, and we won't talk about it anymore. But that you really find out what of these things are useful, what things might need to be changed, but we will come to this point later. So first of the tools and rules is the company-wide workflow that we have implemented. We have one workflow that we use for all parts of our teams that are working on this project. And we think that this is really important, because it's easy to onboard people to a project. So when somebody joins a new project, they only have to care about the context and the content of this project, and they don't have to care about the settings around anymore, because it's the same everywhere. So there's the same Jira structure in our project, there's the same wiki structure in our project. So people don't need to run around and look, okay, where can I now find the responsible people, and where do I now track my time, because we have the structure that's enrolled everywhere, and that makes it a lot easier for them. This workflow consists of a series of backlogs and action steps. So for example, we have this Jira workflow that's usually something about, I don't know, 3 steps, 5 steps, somehow with to do in progress done. And we have split this up even more. So if we take, for example, to do, what does to do mean? So what is it when a ticket is in to do? Is it there because we just have a first idea what should be done? Do we still need requirements? Do we maybe need to check back with the client to see that everything is really clearly defined? Do we need some planning? Do we need some estimation? And what is with this ticket? Or how can we start with this? So we split this up, that we have now status for all of these phases, so that we know at all points where this ticket really stands. And only when all requirements are there and when everything is estimated and planned as well for the operating departments as for QA, then we put the ticket on ready to be implemented. And only then people can start working on this ticket, because they know it's a final version with what they can work. We also defined action steps, so what needs to be done in different statuses. We defined our own Jira types. ticket types so that we know at first sight what the ticket is roughly about because of its type, and yeah, things like that.
All right. Back to me. I have been drinking 2 glasses of water already because I'm pretty nervous, and if I have nothing to say, then probably I'll just keep doing that. So let's talk about communication. Communication was in the past, it was like when you say back in the days, it was wild. You would have some project managers who would prefer to write emails to the team. You would have some who would prefer to write in Skype, some who would do it in Slack, do it in the Confluence, in Jira, some who calls you, who would call you, who would go to your desk if physically possible and try to get you to do some things right now and so on. And this was creating a lot of chaos and was part of the space that this lack of space that nobody was having in order to focus on their tasks. So in order to remove all this noise, we first said, let's move the communications into one place and let's do it where we work. Like Ella has said on the previous slide, we are working with Jira, so we do what people are supposed to do with Jira. It's nothing magical about it, but we just started doing like if when you are a developer and you are done with implementing a task, you just move it one step to the right in the workflow. If you are blocked because you lack some information, you just move it into a special column called blocked, and everyone who has to take care of the task would know what to do with it. So by doing it where we work, we suddenly have all the communication in one place, and at the same time, we managed to make it asynchronous. And asynchronous is very important because all of a sudden we are on the one hand making the difference between the normal and the urgent. And there's not anymore that some project manager calls you and wants something from you now. There's always this communication in Jira where you say, I'm done with this. Whoever is going to pick up after me in the same work stream and work based on my work are able to do it. And you say it with respect. You don't go and finish a task and say, hey, I'm done with it, and start with it. You start now with it in the next 5 minutes, or else you just put it out there and it's their choice because they know best when to start their work. So we added respect, we decelerated everything, and we put it in one place. This made a lot of a difference in avoiding communication chaos. And the third thing is that we are very, very big on guidelines. There was a session on the DrupalCon right before this one about guidelines, and I didn't get to see it because I was preparing this session, but I am very, very keen on guidelines. I think that they are very important because they create a baseline that guarantee a certain sense of quality by having everyone do some, I call them standard situations, things that repeat themselves where you have to act pretty much the same way, to do it in the same way, to do it consistently and with a certain baseline of quality. This is on the one hand, and on the other hand, they allow you for deviation because every time a guideline meets the real world project situation, there are some things that won't work, and they will make you think, what doesn't work? How can I do it? How can I improve it? Does it apply to other projects? And then you start improving the guidelines and making it possible for us to always have expect the best that we can offer, so to say. Just to give you some examples, we have guidelines for basically everything, for kickoffs, for retrospectives, for how you onboard someone, for how do you store files of different types, how do you communicate different types of message categories and so on. They are really helping. I guess I would really insist on one example. The last one that I have written is about onboarding. Basically, it says that, let's say you are a front-end developer and you join a project, and while doing so, you will go to a wiki page in our project space that will tell you, okay, you have to go to the project manager, who is this person, spend half an hour with them, and you get onboarded on the ways of working on this project. Additionally, you have to do some personal reading of these 3-4 linked wiki pages. Then, as a front-end expert, you go to the lead front-end developer, and they give you 1 hour of onboarding on the front-end specific tasks in the context, and then you get to do some more specialized reading and so on. And we are able to put a timing in each project on every kind of activity of this kind. And then all of a sudden, you can pre-plan the fact that if someone joins a project, it costs them, let's say, 8 hours of onboarding or 6 hours or 15, depending on the complexity of the project, sometimes even longer, right? But you can schedule it and you make it part of your plan. And this is, of course, important, not only in terms of timings, but also in terms of planning the budget for the whole company, right? Because if people switch, you create overhead and you have to take care of that. That being said, I give it back to Ela.
Yeah, but as you can imagine, there's something that's way more important than rules and guidelines. And that is the team behind that, because we also experienced this quite often in the past. When you define such things like such rules, guidelines, we have produced tons of wiki pages where we define such things, but then in the end, nobody stick to it. So you really need the team behind that who's willing to bring this into the organization and the company, and to see that people want to work with this. And yeah, let's come to, in fact, that's my favorite slide, and not only because I like this happily ever after, but because for me, that was the game changer we had and what changed everything. To understand why that is so important for me, let's again move back 3 years ago when we had the situation that project management was located close to account management and to sales, and everybody of the project managers was doing their own kind of work. And that was, I don't want to be unfair. So we had good project managers. The problem was only that they then were overloaded with work and they left quite soon. And that led to all the situations with the chaos we mentioned in the beginning. And I had a time that I spent like half of my days just sitting in escalation meetings. So I was sitting there with the other operating departments, with the project managers, and we've been talking what went wrong, why it went wrong, who was causing this problem, and how can we solve it for the next time. We had a plan how to solve it. 2 weeks later, I sat there with another group of people from another project, and we were talking again about the exact same things. So we never managed to get some stability in our processes. And that reached a point where I then really insisted on getting my own IT project manager. So I wanted somebody in my team that I could also control whom we would hire and find the right people for this position, because I think it's important. I mean, IT project managers, they need to have this structural thinking, and they need to have this interest in the projects we are doing. So it's really difficult when people are coming from another sector and they are doing more classical project management, and they are not even interested in all about, for example, what is Drupal? When they have never looked into a Drupal backend, it's really hard to understand what it's about when the people are doing something in Drupal. So we got the first 2 IT PMs. We put them on our most complex IT projects, and that worked really great. And it was clear pretty soon that this is a good way of going, and more IT projects requested these IT project managers, so we had to grow the team. And that's where Chip came in, and he was working already for us, and he was working in the account management for one of the most complex IT projects we had. And he was really great in what he was doing, and he was really interested in IT. So I luckily could convince him that he joins us, and that he took over the IT PM, and that he was willing to grow this team. And he grew this team pretty fast. So we find some more people, and it didn't take too long that everybody in the company realized that projects were running much smoother than they did before. And so we ended up not only doing IT projects, but after, I don't know, half a year, we also started to do projects without any IT involvement at all. So we also took care about the UX and design projects, or projects that were only about concept and consulting. So it was really great to have this team there, and it was really a success. And then the other part of building so Chip didn't only build this team, but he was also willing to bring CPMF and our project management framework into the company. And he was willing to go into discussions with our CEO, who built this in the beginning, and with me, who was then participating at some point. And we were having many circles and rounds about it to make it work for us. And he pushed it into his team. He was having a lot of discussion with the people in his team, and they keep constantly working on that, but then also constantly pushing it into the whole organization and taking care that everybody really works with it, and that people don't sneak around, and that everybody after 1 or 2 months is still doing what they want again without taking care about that. And I think this is the core about everything. You need somebody who brings this into the organization and who takes care that it stays there and that people really work with this, because otherwise all the time you spend on that was just wasted.
Okay, so this was somehow the payback for me mentioning that you built the toys for, for my little ones. But you know, Ela is also a super great CTO. She cares very, very much about the IT team, and she's always there for us. Now that's true. But that aside, it is a thing of people in the end if you succeed, and there are two sides to it in my opinion. There's the strategy and the delivery, and they both have to coexist. And I always think of the fact that there are so many companies out there that have really, really great ideas, and sometimes they are written down in very good, structured, clear strategies, and then they go into delivery or into execution. And let's say the original stakeholders, the ones who design the strategy, slowly zone out. Then some miscommunications start happening, some inclarities arise, and slowly everything kind of fades away, and the things don't get implemented anymore. We were really, really lucky to be strong on the delivery side by the fact that we not only got a team put in the IT to be structurally to have a mindset of around revolving around structure, but we also got the means. We got enough budget in order to pilot the first projects. We got enough projects to real projects to work with in the beginning, and the budget to do the extra effort to test this framework. And this led to the fact that the space formed where you started talking a lot about what is working and what is not working. And this discussion space is very, very vital, because it helped us be able to align with each other, to stay on the same or reach the same wavelength, actually reach it, because we were black boxes in the beginning. But most importantly, this space had the original stakeholders follow through with the execution of implementing this framework into CoCoMore. And it might sound absurd for some of you, but our CEO only stopped, let's say, turning his Sauron eye to this project management framework and its execution, I think about 3 or 4 months ago. And he was like, it was almost like a ceremonial meeting where you never would have expected that he says, okay, now it's enough. I see that you are doing this the right way. You are going the straight path. I'm out of it, and I will deal with something else. And I think this was very, very important. It was exhausting at times, especially in the beginning, because in the beginning, him, the head of operations, they were on a very, very high level, strategic level, and very theoretical level about what they intended. And we were in the everyday, in the trenches, right? Talking about small things that matter a lot, and they matter when many of them happen. And we've had to learn to speak the same language. And it took more than a year to get there, to start to be constructive with each other, and to stop being frustrated with each other, and so on. Start really being able to build upon the core principles that are cool, and not lose the objective while doing so. Yeah, with that, I give it back to Ela.
Okay, I think we need to hurry up a bit, Chip, because
all right,
somehow, yeah, not having too much time left. So, yeah, let's keep this a bit shorter. The result we got is way more than just a framework, and it's a basis for collaboration. And one thing that it's the most beautiful about our jobs in PM is that there are tons of impulses coming from everywhere. And of course, there's no time for all of them, but we can learn a lot, both as individuals and as team, from each other. And we can just take the impulses we get from all the different departments and see what are the ones that are worth to be followed, and then bring them in again, iterate through them, discuss this in the teams, and adapt the process constantly. So it's really important that we not say, okay, now it's here, now we aligned on this, now it's like that and fixed, and we will never touch it again. But it's important to constantly improve it and adapt it to our situation.
All right, trying to keep it short too. What we did usually in the beginning was to work in different projects, of course, seize different situations and try to always take the best out of them. Everything that worked, we try to bring together to the table in a weekly PM meeting, share with the others and try to scale it to make everyone implement it in their projects so that their projects got better too. While doing that, we learned to have this to make this act of translation a part of our DNA. And on the other hand, we also learned the fact that most of the issues that we have are not about one specific thing not working, one specific department not working out, but mostly about the fact that departments are not working well together. We weren't used to it. We were, like I said, black boxes operating next to each other, right? And we weren't used to work together on something, but instead everyone was focused on their deliverables and would blame the others if something would not work. We started getting past that. We had CPMF as a framework forced us to sit basically at the same table and to talk the same language and to resolve our issues. And there are like simple things like the fact that if you are a designer and you have to hand over a description of, let's say, how component interactions look like when you click on the mouse, what happens with the components that you designed, the designers would speak a different language that the IT would expect, and then we would develop something differently. And we started talking about those and taking care of those issues, and we learned that every time you have collaboration working, it's bringing you so much more than if you have, let's say, the backend development, because they are super great saving the project. It's stress-free and it unites us and it makes us follow the same goals. This is the first thing. And the second thing is that while you do that, you cannot do otherwise but start seeing more and more the big picture. Because we do different things, right? The deliverables that I know that different departments deliver, they are different. They don't have anything to do with each other. So you start more and more thinking about the big picture and about the value behind the things that we build. And the beautiful thing about value is that it fosters creativity. And I'll try to illustrate this in a very, very basic example. Like you have a website with content on it and with some newsletter, right? Sign up. Someone, the client, let's say, wants to drive conversion to increase it by 10%. And you have this goal, which is super, super clear for everyone, and everyone interprets it differently, right? Like UX would go and would check the user journeys and would check the interactions and see how they could optimize the interactions to channel the user to register, right? Visual design would also try to channel the user by their means to register. Front end would actually work maybe on reducing the JavaScript in order to make the pages load faster and drive make the user experience more pleasant and influence the user to register like that. So you have a multitude of work streams that can happen to reach the same goal, and you can talk about them if you keep talking about the goal and about ways of reaching them. And this is how we learn to grow together and to think more about the value behind the things that we do. And this is probably our highest achievement so far. With that, I will move on to the fact that we are right now actually in a happy place.
Yeah, right. So that all what we just mentioned above results in the end in a happy team and happy clients. And of course, it's not like everything is pretty and shiny, and there are still the common problems that you always experience, especially in an agency setting. But I think these problems are rather the exception nowadays. And generally, we are all happy and it's working fine. And then even if we experience these problems, we have better methodologies at place to solve these problems. And we better know how to tackle these problems so it doesn't result in the ultimate chaos that we had in the beginning, but we rather have changed our communication so much, our processes too much, that it's much more easy to address problems and to solve them. So yeah, we are all happy. And what's next?
Okay, what's next is, as you can see on the picture, we are going to have our Christmas party next week. It's going to be virtual. We are going to do some escape rooming in teams of 5, I think, and then gift ourselves surprise gifts that the company pays for. And apart from that, on the long run, I think building upon all these things that we have been talking about, we will pursue two goals that are very, very tied to each other and that are very, very simple to articulate, but super hard to achieve. We want to get everyone at Cocomore be as close as possible to asking themselves all the time, what can I change for the better from my position? How can I support the projects? How can I support the company from my position? To keep asking that and act upon that question. And the second thing is this acting upon that question has actually no limits. You don't have to think about or to worry yourself with structures, with projections of what would be professional and what not. There is the sense of value up front there, and you have if you have an idea how to go there, how to get there, just act on it and do it. And if we get there, there's probably nothing to stop us. We have been using some images that we took from the web. They were for free, but they were made by these very talented people. Thank you for being able to use them. And with this, I think we are done. I don't know what to say.
So I think we have 4 minutes left for questions.
So I'll just stop the screen and try to move my Zoom.
Yeah. Maybe we can start with the one, this one. How do all these guidelines work together with self-managing teams and Scrum values? It sounds like a lot of control from the PM over the team processes. And I think Chip is the one to answer.
So the whole framework is a lot of rules, true. And it's much more not simple than Scrum is, and it comes from a different place, right? But the whole framework actually works with agile development. You can work in iterations with it. You can discover your product in iterations and develop it in iterations. The framework basically only targets standard situations that happen all the time in projects and tries to propose a way of how to solve them, and gives you, of course, the liberty to choose to do otherwise if there is reason to do it otherwise because the project asks for them. We are not working with Scrum at Cocomore because we never managed to implement it successfully, and because we are in a very good place with what we have right now. We think that the framework that we are using is flexible enough, and people seem happy, so we are going with it for now.
And maybe just to add that, I mean, we didn't implement Scrum because we just often have the setting that it's not really, we are not able to implement this because we often just have projects where we need to do a fixed price. So we have a fixed scope, we have a fixed deadline, and we have to fix budget. So you cannot be really agile to the core. And 2 minutes, so we have time for another one. How are iterative improvements to processes communicated to teams on an ongoing basis to ensure everyone's consistently on the same page?
We have several things there. Like usually it's the thing of the project managers to communicate them in the teams, but there are many improvements that have to be communicated cross teams, right? And then we like, for example, we have redesigned the way we want to structure our project spaces in the wiki, and for that I have a session only in February because all the other time slots are already occupied for presenting it to the whole company and making it available to the whole company, making the knowledge available to the whole company that there is a new wiki structure in place and you should adhere to it. Of course, until February we are pushing it through the project. We are pushing the information in the kickoffs and in different meetings that we create in the projects in order to communicate those changes. But this is how it usually happens via the projects, and whatever is cross projects, it gets an own meeting with everyone, either from Cocomore or from parts of Cocomore that are involved.
Okay, and well, 50 minutes, the seconds left. Maybe quick one, which proportion of project management do you plan for your projects? And I think we don't have a fixed number for that. So it always depends a lot on the projects of how many different departments are involved, how the client is. I mean, you also know that there are some clients you need to talk more with, sorry. There are others where it's easier. So I would say it depends. Something between 10 and 30% is probably quite some fitting percentage, right? So it really depends a lot on the work we are doing.
The average is actually 18. I have been looking at the data recently. I even posted something with the data in one of our teams in Microsoft Teams. The average is 18, and it is actually 18 if you consider only pure project management, but often we are also the business analysts. And if we are that, you can usually add like 10% on top of it, and we end up at towards 30, like Ela was saying.
Okay, then I guess that's it. Thanks a lot for joining us with this. And it was our first RuperCon session, and we've both been quite nervous, I think. And it was really nice to have you around. And hopefully next time we see you in person, right? Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.